Okay, welcome everyone to our class in Iyun. We call it Inside Out, which means that we try to start from the Torah and go out and see how the final halacha comes from our analysis of the Chumash. So, just as an introduction for people that may have missed it, I'm going to just give a little brief review of Tfunos, okay, and talk about what we're going to do. Okay, now, I don't know how much you read Tfunos, but that's, but I'm just going to give you a little overview about it, okay? So Tfunos, their Tfunos by the Ramchal basically has two parts. One is an analysis of what he calls the analysis of sugiyas, in which he tells us the functions or the process going on when the Gemara analyzes a Mishnah. Okay, we spoke about it a little when we talked about the Mamar, Sheila, Tshuva, Kasha, Teretz, Raya, and Stira. Okay, that part I'm not going to get involved with now, because what we're trying to do, what I'm trying to do is, when we spoke about our chart, we spoke about having the subject, or we called him the poel. Who's doing the activity? Okay, it could be a master buying a slave. It could be a man killing another man. But so we have to know who the subject is, the poel, who's doing the activity, what the activity was doing, and then what was the result of the activity. Okay, so and then we said that we have to now talk about each of the actors in the constellation in the case, to see what their responsibility is to each other. Okay, so if two people were fighting, for instance, so now we have two people fighting. Now one of them hits the woman who's pregnant, so she's now the victim, but there's more than her. There's not only she's the victim, but the baby's the victim. So we have now two people who are involved in the actual fight, and two people involved in the consequence of the fight. Okay, so to talk about the labels that we will find helpful here, the Ramchal identifies 24 different activities that go on in analyzing a subject. Okay, in our case, it's going to be a poel. Okay, he tells us that we have to look for the Geder, the definition. So, for instance, when we started talking about Eved Ivri, we have to know what type of Eved Ivri is it. I mean, excuse me, it just said Eved, Ki Yikne Eved, when a person buys an Eved. We don't know the Geder, we don't know the definition of who this Eved is. Is he a Jewish Eved? Is he a Goyish Eved? Okay, and then we're going to have the Chalakim, the various parts of the Nosei. Okay, so if a man hits another man, we're going to have to divide it. The Torah starts dividing it later on between whether he hits him with a fist or he hits him with an object. Okay, so we have to divide the various parts. We talk about the quality. For instance, is he a Jewish man? Is he a Goyish man? Is he a Katan? Is he a Gadol? That's called Eichos. Kamos. How many people are involved in it? Okay. One person, two people. The chomer, which is the material, sometimes that's important, sometimes not, like this whole week's parsha with all the different types of truma that goes into making in the Mishkan. There, the material is very, very important. The tzura, he'll define two types of tzura, the form, the physical form, and an intellectual form, which we'll get into. I'm just trying to give it, again, I always like to give an overview so you know where we're going. And then he talks about the pu'ula, that's the word, this is where I got it from, the pu'ula, which is the activity of the nosei. What is he doing? And there he breaks it into two parts, into the tivis and the ritzonis. What does a tivis means? An animal, for instance, works, his activities are done al pi teva, whereas a man's activity is done al pi ratzon. He has the ability to choose. Okay, even a man can do certain things al pi teva, right? And his heart beats al pi teva. So when we're looking for an action, we want to know, is it a tibus or ritzonis? So when it came to, for instance, a man murdering another man, it was a big nafkamina. If he did it willfully, or he did it shogeg. Okay, that means it happened through his body, but it was not his will. Then we talk about the hefel, which is the result of the act. Another important thing is the sug and the min, okay, where he stands. It's very interesting when we're looking at the Torah itself. The Torah likes to talk in terms of, at least in this little part, of particular cases. An ish who buy, a person who buys a eved, or a man who hits another man. Okay, when we look at the Mishnah, we'll see all of a sudden it says Arba Avos Nazikin. It now talks about things in categorical classes, but that's something that we'll see. So it's very important. Another aspect to define is where our subject is in terms of the hierarchy. Okay, then the Mesubav, very interesting, is the result of his act. He's going to talk about, is it a moledis or is it a poelis? Moledis is like a father giving birth to a son, or poelis is the result of an activity, like we say the person it dies, for instance, or is injured. Now, the MCE will be the means that the no-say is using. So that's what we're talking about. Also, what was the means that the person used in order to do the damage, for instance. So if it's an animal, you see, it's very interesting when we talk about an animal damaging another man's field, for instance. So when we talk about the characters, there's the animal, there's the let's say the tomatoes that were eaten, okay, but then there's the shomer, or the person who owns the animal, and then there's the person who owns the field. So we actually have four people involved. So this animal really is a means of the owner that the recipient of the damage, the owner of the field, i.e., will now have to claim against the owner of the animal. Now, the owner of the animal didn't do direct damage as when he kills another man, but it's indirect because he was supposed to watch the animal and it wasn't watched. Okay, so MCE is very important. Miss Orer, what was the motivation for doing the act? For instance, Yethro, what motivated him to become Jewish? Okay, so sometimes the motive is important. Sometimes it may not be important. Maybe only the result is important, but we have to investigate that. The tachlis, what's the goal of the act? Like with the woman, the goal of those two people fighting were what? They were fighting with each other. Okay, the result was that this other bystander was injured, but their result was not to hurt her. Their result was to hurt each other. Okay, the misubavas we spoke about, which is the result. And then we talk about the miskabrim, which are various conditions that exist in the subject, and we'll get into it a little together. The place, that may be significant, okay? For instance, in which place can you do an act of kinyan? You know, can you do it in the matzav? That's the position things are in, the movement, the time, the relationships are very important, the subject, comparisons, differences, and opposites. Okay, so that basic breakdown, just to show you, he has 24. Now, in Sefer Higayon, for instance, when he talks about Siba, he breaks this down into many more categories, okay? But I'm just giving, again, what I like to do is always go from the general to the specific, so we get a broad overview. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when we start labeling our actors, we should have these tools so we can put nice labels on them and then discuss very clearly what the problems are. For instance, we said if the poel is not there, if the pool is not there, if the mesuba is not there, so we have to say, hey, you know, why isn't it there? What happened? So we either have to fill it out with another pasuk or with some Torah Shabbat Peh somewhere or through logic, you know. That's what we have to do. Okay, so let's look at the book and go through it together. All right, this is Derek Tefunos in chapter 11. let's just...
Those are categories that apply just to the Pe'ula?
No, all these things apply to the no-say. 24 really talk about a no-say, okay? It's a no-say. When you have a no-say, okay? See, these are havchanas a no-say, they're called. That means the aspect of any no-say. So when we're looking at any no-say, some or all may be significant in our analysis, okay? So we should just have this...
but these are...
Yeah, go ahead.
Some of them probably, they turn out also in the recipient of the action, I assume, right?
Yes, yes. We can talk about exactly. So that's why I talk about the actors don't have to be the poel. It could be the person who's receiving it. You see, and we have to talk about him. You see, exactly. So we're going to have to just use these terms when we label the different actors in any halacha. We're always going to have a group of actors, and we're going to have to label them, and then we're going to have to see the halachic significance of each one, and it gets to be a very interesting and complicated relationship, of course, as we get more and more people involved and more dinim involved. But again, we go from the simple to the complex. So let's start simply. He says like this. Up to this point, we explained how to analyze a sugya in the Gemara. Okay? There he breaks things down into statements and into syllogisms and then into proofs. A very important part of Der Tfunos is proof. Okay, because in Havana, in understanding, you want to understand what's being said and the source of what's being said, and that's a whole subject where he got involved in. But for this part, we're doing just the Ata Nivaer. Now we'll explain Havchanot sheyesh lahavin benosin, the various aspects of any subject. Shenir tziladon kafi asugyas v'halachas o kafi haseichel. He says, I'm going to talk about the basic aspects of any subject that you want to talk about, lidon, judge, according to the sugyas, halachas, or your mind. In other words, whenever you have a situation, it could be with you and your wife or you and your children, you can also break down the situation into, okay, who are the subjects here and what are they doing in the case, okay, in the constellation here. And then you have to see, of course, what the Torah would recommend, or more strongly, I use that word lightly, but what would the Torah would say in this constellation that you're confronted with? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so here he goes. He says, he says there's 24 general categories that you have to discern when you're analyzing any subject. What are they? The first one is called the mahus of the subject. What does mahus mean? That means, it's another very important thing with Tfunos. He gives a word and he defines it. So you can't necessarily import other meanings that you know from modern Hebrew, you know from other sources, because what he's doing is creating these labels and defining them, which is dramatic thing, but that's what he did. Okay, so what's the mahus? V'hi kol el inyano shel hanosei kafi mashu be'emes shebo tavchinehu b'machshavasecha mikol shar hanosim hamurutzim bo. Hamutzarim bo, I'm sorry. So when you talk about the mahus of the subject, the essence of the subject, it's that which distinguishes this subject in your mind from all other subjects. Okay, what is this, the unique quality in this subject that separates? So in other words, and this is how I'm applying it in our case, if it says ki yikne ish eved, and I want to know who is this person who's doing the acquisition, and also I want to know who is this person that's being acquired. What is the definition of him? Okay, is he a Jew? Is he a guy? Is he a katan? How does it work? So the first thing I have to know is the mahus of anything. What is the definition of ubir ha'inyan haklali azer nikra geder? And when I define this subject, I call it making a geder. Okay, a gather is a definition. It's a very interesting word. Simple meaning of gather is what? Oh, goder, he says. Okay.
Is it's the truth is that even the English word or the Latin word definition has the same etymology as the word gather, which is a limit or offense.
Exactly. So the
It's
basic
actually
exactly.
This is his definition here is almost verbatim out of Aristotle.
100%.
Aristotle or Plato, in fact.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so he is
The way that,
yeah, he is Aristotelian. Okay. And what he did, and he says it clearly, is he took those terms and he modified them and changed them according to what he felt that the Torah agreed with or disagreed with. Okay. But if he's very open about it, that and there's no problem about it. That's why this is classical Aristotelian logic. It's just the format is something, and also his definitions vary, but no doubt about it. Okay, so that's together. Now,
this is how, by the way, Aristotle, together, I mean, same in Aristotle, the definition defines the essence by virtue of what's called the differentia. In other words, that the differentia, what differentiates two essences from each other is really what constitutes the definition.
Right. Exactly.
That's what he's saying here. Right?
No, that's exactly what he's saying. So
yeah.
It's exactly what he's saying. Okay. Now our work is application. Okay. It's not just to understand the terms, but application. So that's why I'm introducing these terms, and I think they're very, very important for us in our analysis. Okay, so for instance, he gives an example, a Gemara from Peah. Ezehu olelis, okay? You have to take Peah now. What is called the olelis of the Peah? So he says, Kol she'ein lo kataf v'lo nataf, okay? Anything that doesn't have a stem or a cluster. Okay, those are the things that are left over that don't have stem and cluster. Okay, so he's defining it through the negative definition. Okay, so in other words, if you have one or two grapes, it's going to be called an olelis. All right. V'zenikra geder shel olelis v'hainu eshkol she'ein lo kataf v'lo nataf. It's a group of grapes that don't have that V-shape form. Okay, now he goes into what's the mishpat of the geder. Hu shidbora ha'ika masha batzmuso shelanose. A geder has to define I'm giving a shear, Esther. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Umishpat geta hu shivar ikar masha batzmuso shelanose. It has to clarify the essence of the subject. Shehu masha ose also masha. That's really the etzem. It's what makes it what it is. Perisho. Shu'ilu hayadava zeh nedar mimenu. If this thing was lacking from it, lo hayazeh hanose elanose acher. If this essential, would you say differentium? If that essential quality was not there, then it would not be what it is. It would be something else. So the first thing you have to do in your definition is to define what's the essence of the thing. I'm again using it when I am looking at a pasuk. I want to define who this nosei is. Okay? If I can't define who the nosei is because of what the words say, like it says ish, so I know it's an ish, but what happens if the ish, is that really the only nosei? I mean, could it be an isho? Could it be a cotton, you see? So you have to always find in any one of these cases, you have to define what the nosei is. Okay, so on the side of my little charts there, I always said, okay, the nosei here in general is Eved Ivri, the nosei is Ham Ivriya, the nosei here is a man killing another man, okay, a murderer, let's say, the nosei here is, but that has to be done. The second Pavchana distinction in a subject is what he calls the halakim, the parts, and that's, for instance, he brings a Gemara in Chulin, Shnei Oros Yesh Lo Leveshet, food pipe has two types of skin. Okay, it's made up of two different types of skin. V'chein Galila Elyon v'Galila Tachton v'Emek. Or when we talk about northern Israel, we talk about the north part of the Galil, the central part of Galil, and the valley. Okay, so those are the parts of the Nosei. Okay, the second one he calls is the Eichus. V'hu techunas hanosei umezgo, kagon. Imhu karv, imhu cham. This, if you know Aristotle, it's classic Aristotle. If it's cold, and it's only a kagon, these are only examples, right? Is it cold? Is it warm? Is it wet? Is it dry? What it looks like, okay? Its strength, its weaknesses. Is it weak? Is it strong? So all the qualities of the nosei. Now, again, when we're dealing with a halacha, so not all these things may be relevant, and also to find which particular eichus is important is work, and not so simple all the time. But just to get a general overview, derech mashal, chitzon adam upnimi lavan. Okay, so there's a question of color. The outer skin looks red, and the inner skin looks white. Or eshune havut somet hagidim, v'rechiche lo havut somet hagidim. They're trying to define what the connection of the gidim, of the what are called the gidim, those that gidanasha, that you're not allowed to eat, the tendon, right? So the sinew. So okay, so the hard ones are not considered the sinew, and the soft ones are. So that's a quality that's very important in the definition of what's called the gidanasha, that we're not allowed to eat. Okay, so here's a quality of color, another quality is softness and weakness. Okay, and that's a very large category, and in Higayon, he goes through the whole business. Okay, all right. Then we have the kamos, which is the amount. B'hu mida b'masha shayach mida. It's anything that is applicable to measurement. So, for instance, b'minyan b'masha chay, anything that you would measure in number. Derech masha harei mekadesh sheishes ama l'kol ruach, or harei mekadesh arba'im v'chamisha gafanim. Now here he slipped it in again in Higayon. I would just suggest you just read through it. I mean, it's a little hard maybe to do it, whatever it is. But there he gives a much more exhaustive exposition on all these hafchanot. But basically you have what we call the kamas tovek and the kamas nifrad, which is called discrete measurement and continuous measurement, right? If I say 6 eggs, that's called discrete measurement. If I talk about 15 inches or 3 pounds, that's called continuous measurement. Okay, so, and that's of course very, very vital in certain halachas. Okay, not every halacha, but it may be a hafchana, an aspect that must be spoken about. Okay, good. That's the kamos. Okay. Then the fifth one is called the chomer, hu mash mimenu naseh hanosei. It's what the nosei, it's what the subject is made up of. Okay. So, for instance, if you're talking about a metal instrument, so then it's chomer's metal. If you're talking about a vessel made out of clay, so it's made out of clay. Okay, so that's called chomer. Okay, tsura is important, and again, you were at Aristotle, but there's 2 types of form. There's what he calls tsuras atzmis and tsuras morgeshes. Okay, one is the intellectual form of something, and one is the physical form that you feel. I was thinking about what we were talking about the other day, common sense. There's something called sense, and there's something called common sense. There's sense perception, which is the 5 senses, and then there's another category called common sense, which people accept as sensible, like stealing is not a good thing, for instance. Okay, but anyway, here he breaks down in this analysis of the subject to an atzmis, which is the tsuras atzmis is the mahuso shel hanosei, which is the intellectual definition of it, Derek Marshall. Tzuras Adam Hu Hios Balei Chai Medaber. Okay, it's classical. And when you want to talk about the intellectual form of a man, so you define him in his category and what makes him different from the rest of the things in the category. So he's a Baal Chai, he's an animal, and what makes him different from all the other animals is the Medaber. Amnam ze inyan muskal ba'adam, lo murgash v'nirabo. When we define a man's intellectual form, so it's a concept, and it's not what he physically looks like. Okay, what he physically looks like is, he has hands and feet and skin, all those things. Okay, so Murgash is who Tabni Sanose Kamoshiru Anaim. He says that the physical form is what you see with your eyes, Derech Mashal. When we talk about chalitza, it has to be kamin teva perutza. The shoe, I think it's not good if it's a box, like a broken box. Okay, or in Kalim, it's kamin gam. Gam in Aramaic, it's a gam is gamma, It has to look like the Greek letter gamma. Okay? Okay.
Right.
All right. Havchana, yes. Go ahead. Go ahead, please. Break in all the time.
This is not, okay. Yeah, no, I only break in when I need to. Otherwise,
No, I'm saying, but don't feel, that I hate to keep talking if I'm not communicating. So whenever something doesn't make sense,
no.
One of my rules, by the way, is 2 and 2 is 4, right? So if it doesn't add up to 4, please talk. Yes. What would you want to say?
I just Atzmis and Murgeshes. I mean, I guess I can't help but have Aristotelian distinctions in mind. So you said that it's the difference between the form itself and the intellectual form, but it seems Murgeshes is not intellectual here.
No, 100%. That's why the first one, Atzmis is what he calls the muskal, the conceptual form, and the Murgeshes is what he calls the perceptual form. Okay.
Right.
Okay, how big it is, how small it is, what skin it is. I mean, there's a physical. Those are the senses. That's what the senses sense, but not the intellectual sense, but the physical senses. Okay, that clear? Good. The 7th one is the pu'ula. You see, that was so important to us. That's the activity that the nosei is doing. V'hi mashu poel b'zulaso. It's what it does to something else. Interesting. Okay, v'yesh bo shnei minim. There's 2 types of pulot. One he calls the tivis, and one is called the ritzonis. What is the tivis? The natural activity. He masha poelis v'nimsa ze b'ze b'teva. It's an activity that between 2 objects which is done by nature. For instance, Dimenakra lehu lamaya. There's a certain vinegar that cleans out the intestines. Okay, so this vinegar is doing the activity on the intestines of cleaning. You see? Okay, so that's the pula that it's doing to the other thing. It's doing the pula of cleaning. The second one is called ritzonis. Vihi masha poeles habanei adam b'ritzonam. It exists in human beings. I don't think there's much ritzon anywhere in animals and stuff like that, maybe a little bit, but it's usually Hashem gave that portion to human beings. Derish Marshal, Hakore Tashma. Reading of the Shema is something that a person chooses to do. Okay, although some people may be doing it al piteva, but that's usually a conscious act. Okay, a choice, in other words. Okay, and not a tivis. And we said that in our case, for instance, it's very important to know: was the murder done with sonus a tivis? That's the difference between an accidental murder and premeditated murder. Okay, the 8th one.
And under tivis, he would. So, sorry, under tivis, I guess he would include instinct.
Yes, all instinct, right. Anything that's not done through an act of choice. Okay? You lean against, shogeg, as we would say, right? You lean against the light on Shabbos, you didn't want to turn it on, right? Or your heart beating is also tivis. Anything that's not done with the will of man. He decides to do it. He doesn't decide to do it, so it's happening through teva. It's called shogeg. Okay.
Yeah.
The eighth one is the hefel. The hefel. V'hu roshem hanirsham benose mima shepoalim bo acherim. It's the impression that's left in the subject from an act, from someone else's act. Okay, so that's why well, let's see what he says. Okay, and then I'm going to say how I sort of, okay, anyway, here. The b'nei ma'ayin hanikvu v'lecha sotmo. The intestines that were cracked and were filled up with liquid. Okay, so the intestines received an action, and the mesubah of that action, or the hefel of that action, is called being split. Okay, and not only was that the intestines, not only were they split, but they also received other liquids which filled up the hole. Okay. Hayat soledisbo, the hand that retracts. Okay, what does that mean? When we have a certain amount of heat, the hefel of that heat on the hand is that it causes it to retract. Okay, so the action of retraction of this hand was the hefel of the heat. An interesting one here. Chamba mixaso, chamba kulo. We have a halacha here that if something is partially heated, like a knife, so you consider the whole thing heated. So the result is that the other half of the knife, which was not directly heated, receives the halacha of being heated. Okay, so it's the hefel. If a little bit is heated, then we say the whole thing is heated. Okay, that's the hefel. Now, here we have sugin min, which is its category and its kind, right? Dahainu, me'ez sug hu hanose o me'ez min. What category does our subject fit into, or what kind does it fit into? Okay, now I'm going to show you later on, Be'ezus Hashem, as we go through the stages of unpacking this material from the Chumash, we'll see that, for instance, the Chumash, as I mentioned, talks about one animal hitting another animal. The Mishnah gives it a categorical name called Nezikin. Okay, now in Nezikin, that's a categorical name for a lot of individual acts that were mentioned in the Chumash. The Chumash talked about an animal goring, an animal walking on another thing, an animal eating another thing, a man falling into a pit that someone made. Okay, so that section is then put into a category called nezikin, damaging. Okay, that whole section is called damaging, nezikin. Okay, so the pratim were made into a categorical class, and I mentioned also in my introduction too that the Mishnah, the Torah has its agenda. It starts from the beginning of time until we come into Eretz Yisrael, and the Mishnah takes that agenda and it starts categorizing. For instance, when we talked about Misa, right, death. Now, death, we had one pasuk in Shemos and one pasuk in Vayikra, right? So the Mishnah takes that together and makes a categorical analysis of those two pasukim. You see, its job is to look at higher level concepts, okay, which are built from the Chumash itself. Okay, so, but whatever it is, we always have to decide, for instance, what category are we involved with? And that's why I did also with the Chumash, and that's why I'm giving you this very, very quick and brief introduction, because I don't think the material here is that revolutionary. What's important for us is the labels and the consciousness of it. But the point here is that when we look at our section of Mishpatim, we say to ourselves, now, what is the general label that we're going to put on all these activities? So we say that's very good. It's called Nazikin, right? Called damagers. Well, then we made a very interesting observation. What does Eved Ivri have to do with Nazikin? All the other things about this guy's killing the other one, and this guy's his animals are killing, and he's a shomer, and therefore people are stealing things, so there's damages to objects. But what's the Eved Ivri doing there? Okay, so we gave a few answers, and I just thought of another one today I'd like to share with you. One answer, I'm talking about Peshat. One answer is that the Torah, we notice, loves to go from the inside out. That means the individual to the group, for instance, okay? Or from, as we looked in the Zikin, from the one man damaging another man to two men fighting with each other and damaging an outside victim, to the next level of man's animals damaging, then man's property damaging, like with a pit. It likes to go from the highest form of responsibility to the lower of forms of responsibility, which is an inside out. So, wow, I lost my point. I'm sorry.
You were saying that you found
Oh yes, so I found another reason for Eved Ivri. Another reason for Eved Ivri. Since one of our actors in damage is going to be an Eved Ivri, we first have to define him. So the Torah first had to define, because the other characters we all know, we don't need the Torah to define him, right? We don't have to, a man and a wife, we don't need the Torah to define. A Katan and a Gadol, we don't have him to define, so he doesn't. But a new character, a new halachic character that comes on the scene has to be first defined before I can put him in context. Okay, so I thought that was maybe, again, these are my hypothesis here, is maybe that's why he was brought first, because since he's going to be one of the important actors here as we talk about killing, okay, if a man murders another man, one of that subcategory is going to be an Eved Ivri, you see. If he's damaging one of the subcategories, if he damages so I first have to introduce him on the scene because he's a new halachic entity. Okay, anyway, that was my but you see, it's by having these tools, by having the tools, then at least you have the right kasha. You see, I told you one of my basic rules is 2 and 2 is 4. Okay, things have to add up. If they don't add up, if all of a sudden I see an anomaly, I say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem to be fitting here, then I have a good kasha. That's a flag. The Torah wants you to do that because it's put there purposely. Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't free associate. He puts things there with very, very high amount of, the highest amount of intellectual purpose. So when we see something that's not adding up, that's a flag that he wants us to say so that we can go into a deeper understanding of the text. Okay, so anyway, that's Sug and Min. Okay, and that's where we got into that little thing, because we said, look, things have to be logically ordered. If they're not logically ordered, then we have to say, wait a minute, stop. Okay, I saw in this week's Parsha too. Did you notice Truma? Did you notice Truma? If you look at Truma, you look in the Parsha of Truma, that look at how the various Trumas were set out and how the Mishkan is built. You see, and you investigate that. And it's very, very beautiful. Again, you'll see this very logical system going from the inside out. First you build the Mishkan, and then you talk about what goes in the Mishkan. And then you build the Orot on top of the Mishkan. So it goes from the center out. Anyway, yes, what were you going to say?
Right. That's right. I know that's right. You start with the Aaron or Brisk.
Right.
That's what I did notice that today. I was thinking of actually it goes from into if a Mishkan is a microcosm of a human being, or rather, if a Mishkan is a model for a human home, so you start with the most intimate, and you work outwards.
Right.
So I want to ask you, Sugad Min, this has some relation to the very first category, which is the definition of
definition. Yes.
It doesn't. Yeah. So I assume it does in Aristotle and Plato as well. I guess what's the chiddush here must be the relationship between the genus and the species.
Yeah.
In other
Also,
words, that both
yeah. No, you don't. You see,
any
you're asking very well. But what I have to explain to you is that he gives. That's why you have to read all his stuff, because he explains many ways to define things. Sometimes you may define things not in terms of sug and min. This is the classic way, but he explains, for instance, um, um, you can talk about a dog as a mashtim kier. You can use one of its segulot as its definition. Okay. So I just wanted to bring that up. Yes. What else did you want to say? So I mean, so that's why when definition doesn't necessarily have to be sug and min. It's the classical way to do it. If you can do it that way, that's the classical way. You can show that what category it's in and what's its distinction. But there's other ways of doing it. Okay. When you don't have the ability to do this, so then you can talk about a mikra of the thing, and that will also be a good definition. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, because each both a sug and a min could be both of them require definition in the first sense.
Yes,
so
they definitely
here
do.
when he says sug and min, he's saying he's really talking about a system of hierarchization.
Correct.
Classification system, which is let's move from the genus down to the species. And then down.
Yes, 100%. This is classic. This is just Hebrew of Aristotle. But it's anything. It's no big secret. I mean, that's what it is. So, right. Okay.
Well, really, Aristotle must have existed for the Ramchal.
Yeah, I don't really know. Some people say some people said that he met Yirmiyahu. It doesn't really bother me so much, because this stuff is, why do I say that? I mean, I tell people, do you use Arabic numbers? Right? You use 1, 2, 3, 4,
right.
How come you use those numbers?
Right.
They're Arabic numbers. The Arabs didn't do it. They brought it from the East. But, we use Aleph, Beit, we use Yud, Gimel, Yud, Daled. What are you doing? You know what I mean? So there's certain basic functions of a human being that you just should be aware of, and that's this basic logical stuff is the foundation. But the more interesting level of the learning is what the Torah rules are. Kal v'choma, binyanav, gezerah shava. That's the interesting things, and also the diyukim that are built in mukhrach, these inferences, the relationship of these two pesukim, for instance, that we spoke about. There's where the excitement starts. Of course, you have to have the basis of thinking, or else you're not even in the ball game. Okay, but the more advanced level is understanding the Torah processes, how they work, and that's the more exciting part. Because this is something that everyone has to know. However, because people don't know these basics, consciously, so the Ramchal has set them out. It was very, very beautiful, very important for him to do. Okay, because it's good to have the basics. You know what I mean? You have to know what you're doing, how you're defining something, and what does it mean, classification? You see, and what is the prat, what is the particular, and what's its we say genera, species. He calls it sug and min. And where you're holding and how you're making those definitions. But okay, beseda. Okay. Anyway, here's this thing of sug, of course, classic balchai, hu sug, shekolel, min adam, min behema, min ophos, min ramoshim, and min dagim. We're talking about animals, so it's a category that includes man, animals, birds, creepy crawly things, and fish. Ukeshia od kolel acher shichlul sugim rabim yikore sugasug. When you have a larger hierarchy, I forgot the word you used before, is better, of these sugim, so you call them the sug of the sug. Okay. V'hasugim niklalim bo nikra legabe minim. And then when you talk about the sug hasug, so then these things become minim of them. These things become types. In other words, whenever you go up the hierarchy, so when you go up the scale, so you go from minim. How do you say? I always get the genera. What's the smaller one in English? The genus and species. And species.
Species is the smaller one.
Yeah. Species. So you go from the species to the genus, but then he says when you're at the place of the genus, and then you go up a level, so now that becomes the species of the next genus. Okay, so that's how he defines things there. Okay, Vasugi nikra bo nikra gabi minim. So then, when you go up one level, so that what you called the sug before now becomes the minim of that sug. Well, gabi minim niklam behem yikro. Ulagabi haminim haniklalim bo nikra sugim, and then everything is going to switch as you go up the scale. So he says Derek Marshall. Geshem. Geshem means physical reality. Hu sug shekol el bali chayim ubilti bali chayim. It includes living and non-living things. V'kol echad mishnayim elu hem sugim shekolim minim harbe. And each one of these, i.e. the bali chayim and the bilti bali chayim, they include many types, species, you say. Derech mashal, bali chayim kol el medaber bilti mechaber. The bali chay, the animals, we can talk about talkers and non-talkers. And in the bilti bal chay, that's kol el, things that are not living, that includes stones and metal and plants. Va'amnam. Bali chai lagabe geshem. It's interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Plants, yeah, you would think that there's life force.
Right. Yeah, it actually, because that definitely goes against the Greek conception.
Anyway,
Greeks believe that plants had souls. Yeah.
So, and it depends how you define bal chai, but you're right. He does. This is what we would call, what's the word animal come from? The word animation, right? Things that move, right? As opposed to plants don't move. So they may have life, but they don't have that ability of movement, except when the wind blows, so a little photosynthesis. But so that's why they're called. That's depends how you define life, okay? Because so they do have life, but they don't have movement. Yeah. So anyway, but that's again. In our analysis, we're going to have to use those hafchanot, those discernments. I forgot what word you used, but we're going to have to use those. What he saw as hafchanot, these aspects to discern what is that definitive aspect that will now divide our class into these different kinds, okay, or species. Okay, so here I just wrote the chart here. These are Ishim, these are individuals, 3 men, for instance, John, Adam, and Bill, who knows what. That goes in, they make up the min of Adam, the min of Behemoth, the min of Ophos, the min of, and that goes into a sub called Bali Chayim, which goes into what he calls the sub. So he basically wants to divide things into those 4 categories. And then as you go up higher and higher in your list, so they'll just have the same relationships to each other, but the names will change depending upon where you are in the scheme of things. Okay, so he says kli etz hu sug kolel shnei minim shehem peshute kli etz mekable kli etz. These distinctions are used all over the place. I mean, what he claims is that he always claims he's not doing anything new. What his new thing is called categorization. It's how he puts these things in a unit, how he builds the whole picture, and he really does. He's quite amazing. I mean, when you get into, he created a complete system of logic that he says can apply to everything. Okay, so I'm not going that far. That's all those, we did hours and hours of this stuff. But here I just wanted to show in Lashon Lamudim that the Ramchal tried to do flowcharts. He didn't have Visio, right? But he actually tried to do it with the tools that he had. Of course, people all say to me, "Yeah, you're using computers and you're using things," you know what I mean? So it's just that we have these tools just to do things easier. If I could, break the psukim up. I told you, I mentioned to you, I used to take Tosfos, and when I taught my classes, I would take a razor blade and cut the pieces up and paste them together, you know what I mean? And then photostat them. Now I don't have to do that. So, but it's obvious that the people who are doing this analysis are very, very sophisticated thinkers, and they're very clear in their thinking. And because we don't see it, and we just read it quickly, so we don't behold the beauty of their analysis. Okay, that's really the other thing I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to sell Bill Gates and the modern world, but I'm just trying to bring the beauty of the analysis into a form that people can appreciate. You know, like my friend Rafael, he doesn't need any of this thing. He teaches very high-level classes, you know what I mean? Very sophisticated level to very, very, you know, and he laughs at me with a smile because he realizes what I'm doing. Because no one really does things this way. You know, they wouldn't think of doing things this way. And everyone tells me the same thing. Oh, this is good for Bali Tshuva, this is good for, good for Cheder, you know what I mean? But it's a very, I believe it's much deeper than that.
It's great for me. It's absolutely
right.
great for me.
Right. And I think it's great for many people, many
people.
Many people. So anyway, and it also was great for me. I mean, Rabbi Goldstein was the one that pointed me in this direction. You know, he said, look, he realized he was doing with people that didn't have a background in learning. So he said, just read these books, you'll get a background. And he himself, when he was in yeshiva in America, in the Chafetz Chaim, there were people there that walked into the yeshiva who were helping develop Albert Einstein's theories. You know, they're very heavy Jews, you know. And when they came in, he saw that very quickly they were getting involved. He said, well, how are you getting involved so quick? And they showed him these books. These books helped them define what was going on. You know, and when I came in, the same thing. When I came into the yeshiva, we didn't have such an orderly place, to say the least. But like the books were all over the place, you know what I mean? So, you know, like for me, I just naturally gravitate towards Seder, you know. So we made a library. We sort of set things up in the right way, you know, because that's just efficiency again. Why, you know, go flying around? And the same thing in thinking. When you, instead of just environmentally absorbing it, and those people who sort of naturally chop it, and the other people don't. So let's try to do things in a more systematic and clear way. So that's what the Ramchal was such a bracha, you know me, because he really does tell you the basics of what's going on here. What's this learning going on? What are we doing? So I'm using him as a basis, and my very important for me is not to let this be a study in and of itself. It can very easily turn into the study of logic. I'm not interested in the study of logic per se. I'm interested in how to learn Hashem's Torah, and if this is a tool that can help me, b'vakasha. Okay? Anyway, that's where we're going. Okay, so here we go with the Siba, right? Now we're going to talk about the 20th one he calls the Siba. Okay? Hima Shemikocho noled hanimsa hamasubav. It's that which, through whose power, is born and the reality of the result, the masubav. V'yesh bo shnei minim. He defines two different types. One is he calls the siba moledes. That's the cause that gives birth to something. And the second one is the siba poeles. Okay, let him define it. Derech mashal. Ha'etz lepri hayotzi mimenu hi siba moledes. The eitz is the siba moledes to the fruit. It gave birth to the fruit. V'harezeh kmo av shehu siba levino. It's like a father who gives birth to a son. V'hu hemshech hanimshach mimenu. It's the consequent that comes from him. Ach, but when we say da'azla machmatea, that's called the siba poelis. When we say that, this is a case in Bab Metzia, that the animal gets hit by the man, so it's moving. It comes because of the hit, the siba poelis. Because of the man hitting him, it's a whole thing of a thief. I don't get into the details of the case, but when a man hits an animal, so he's the siba poelis that the animal moves. He didn't give birth to the animal, right? He's not siba moledes, but he's called the siba poelis. He's called the siba that it moves. V'chein chamra rechani pitchim. Wine and spices increase wisdom or sharpness. Okay, Vehem Siba Poelis. So that's the Siba Poelis to produce this intelligence. Okay. Now, V'harei zeh kichol uman lekli shehu oseh. This is like any artisan's relationship to the vessel that he makes. She'enam hemshech mimenu. It doesn't come from him like the Siba Moletis. Ach nifalim mimenu, but it's only created or made or produced by him. Okay, so that's the two Sibas. Now, he in Higayon, he writes a few paragraphs on this. Okay, so this is just the top level. Okay, just to give us a little introduction. Okay,
it falls within the Siba Poelis. It falls squarely in what Aristotle calls the efficient. They call it the efficient cause. You know, Aristotle has 4 types of causes: efficient, formal, teleological, and forget the 4th one.
well,
anyway, but this is the efficient cause. But it's interesting. I don't remember the first one. I don't remember in Aristotle. But Siba Moletis. It's interesting. I don't remember productive cause. I don't think he has something like that.
Okay. Again, when I show you, I'll show you the Nagoin, and I'll show you the Ramchal in Sefer Gayon. He talks about those 4 courses. Those are the 4 classical courses. Okay. Again, this is just a brief introduction to the subject. Okay. Just a brief overview, because you really have to read. You have to read Higayon, that's all, and you'll see all that Aristotelian stuff just flying out at you. I may even have it here. I think I put it here. Okay, but let's just get what he says here. Here's the Hafchana Echadesrei. 21 is called the MCE, which is the means. Sha'al Yedei Po. Oh, so I wanted to say about this. You see, this is a very interesting thing. This. The Siba Moletis, for instance, okay, we're going to talk about in the Mishnah that there's something called an Av, Arba Avos Nazikin, and it's for instance, when the Torah talks, so it talks about an animal goring another man, or another let's say an animal goring another animal. So the Gemara now abstracts that pu'ula of goring to something called kavanah lahazik. That when any animal, first of all, not only is sure, but when any animal has intent to do damage, doesn't get any benefit from it, it's just to intent to do damage, violence, so that's called keren. So for instance, if an animal, or even a shore, doesn't matter, kicks another animal, he doesn't just walk over the produce, he goes over and he kicks his friend, or he shoves him. Okay, those are all called toldot of the Av of Keren. Okay, so now that's a Siba Moletis. That by making this category, by taking Keren and calling it an Av, we create an intellectual, again, that's why I'm bringing it up, an intellectual Siba Moletis. The Siba Moletis does not have to be physical. It can be an intellectual result. And then the whole problem we're going to have over there, we'll get into that, is the Gemara's first question is does the child, is it less or equal to in its din to the Av? So people jump on this because they say, wait a minute, a result, in other words, for instance, if you have a classical syllogism, all men have legs and Reuven is a man, therefore Reuven has legs, so the result can never be greater than the premises, correct? The premises, the conclusion is a molida of the premises. It was given birth from the premises, so it can't be greater than the premises. It's a fallacy. So, and also it can't be less than the premises either, right? Because it's only an equation. If all men are or if all men have legs and Reuven is a man, it's this equation that Reuven has legs. He can't end up having, through a syllogism, half a leg. So one of the big problems they have there is in the Havamim of the question. How could you say that a Tolda will come out less than an Av? It seems to be a logical contradiction. Okay, so that's really where they go to town. So here, again, why I'm doing this, because it's very important for me to link the abstractions with the Gemara itself. Because again, I'm only interested in learning Torah. I'm not interested in anything else. So things that will help me learn by giving me convenient labels, that's fine. Why do we have to fluff around and search around for a label if there's a clear label already for it? Whether it be Hebrew or English doesn't really matter to me. Okay, but I always, that's why I always try to bring these things to life by integrating it in what we are doing and not leaving it just as a study in and of itself, which I've seen two things. I've seen people study Sefer Gaon and Tfunos as studying themselves without any application, and then I see a lot of abuse to what people are not using it properly. They're abusing it. You know, they're not really understanding the principles that he's defining. They're just using terms as loosely again. Okay, for instance, for when we talk about there's a difference between a shayla and a kasha. A kasha is a contradiction. A shayla just asks for information. There's no attack in a shayla. It's just a question of something is missing. Okay, so but in let's say natural language or the way the language is used, so people will say a shayla is a kasha because they don't make that fine distinction. So it's very important to appreciate the subtleness of the Ramchal's definitions and to use them properly. Okay, and also not to limit their use. The only siba, like I said here, the siba molida is only when an artisan makes a kli. It could be an intellectual siba molida like an av and a tolda. That's why those words are used. But anyway, that's what it is. Okay, now we have the 11th one. It's called the MCE. Sh'al yedei pul She'al yado po'eles hasiba et pulaso. It's the thing that the siba uses to get its results. So as we said, when one man hits another man, so we want to know what was the means that the siba po'eles did his damage to the other man. The means may be very significant. Is it hands? Is it an object? Is it a bullet? Is it an arrow? You know, these could be very significant in understanding what the final result will be as far as the law is concerned. Derech mashal, efshal la'avra b'kiur d'chamra. It can be removed, this bad breath, with a certain type of vinegar. Okay, so that was the means that, it was actually a stain. A stain could be removed with a certain type of vinegar. So vinegar is the emsa'i, the means that the stain was removed. Okay, now we have the 22 is the ma'orer. Okay, it's another type of siba called the siba ma'oreris. That means what awakened the siba poelis to do his act. V'hu mashin sma'oreris hapoel b'ratzon shiafal. How, and it's very interesting here, what awakened the poel b'ratzon, that means the will of the poel to do what he did. Okay, so for instance, he brings, catalyst. It's called a catalyst. Okay,
I think it's a catalyst, or
catalyst.
Or impetus, I guess is another word actually.
Motivation. What motivated him?
No, because motive.
No, motivation is not the motive. It's not the right word.
Motive is. No, I mean, it sounds like, because motive is really intrinsic to the actual ratzon, but a catalyst or an impetus is something that triggers it. It's like a.
But it's not part of it.
It's not really. Yeah.
It's not the thing itself. Okay, so in Hebrew, it's the the thing that wakes you up. The way it arouses you to do the act. Like the reason why he murdered another man was because the other man, spit at him or something. I don't know. knows? That was the Siba Moreris. The Pula that he did was he hit the other man and the man died. But the Ma'orer that aroused him to exercise his will was because the guy, who knows, called him his name or something. I'm just giving a crazy example. Okay, so for instance here he brings some Zvachim. Ma Shmua Shama Uvo V'Niskaya. What did Yetro hear that he came and was Misnagaya, became Jewish? So the answer is the Siba. So that's the question. What was the Siba Moreris? The Siba Moreris was Kriyas Yam Suf. That's what once he heard about Kriyas Yam Suf, that motivated it to come. Okay, so that it was Sibas Yam Suf was the Ma'orer. Okay, that aroused him to become Jewish. Shmuas Kriyas Yam Suf Hayasa Shehisara Es Yesro Lishiyavo. Hearing about Kriyas Yam Suf was the thing that awakened him to come and to become Jewish. Okay, now we have the Havchana Shloshes Rei. That's the Tachlis. What's the goal? He hakavana shemiskaven hapoel b'pulaso. It's the intent of the actor in his activity, right? So like we have in Shabbos, right? If you intend to for instance, you intend to wipe something off the wall, and then you hit the electrical switch. Okay, so that's called shogeg. You never intended to do it. Okay, so you have to know what was the tachlis. The tachlis could be very, very important. Did you intend to murder the person or not? Okay, no, it could be very, very important. Okay, so what was your tachlis? That's the thing. V'hiya kavanah miskaven the Polish also.
In that this is one of the four classical Aristotelian causes. So I guess he doesn't group it here with Siba.
Right. Well, I'm going to show you some stuff because you're already advanced into the study. So I'll show you something in a second. Okay. Let's just go through these.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just going to go through these quickly. Then I'll show you the Vilna Gaon. I'll show you his setup now and right now, and then I'll show you in a second. Okay. Okay. But it's 100% classical. Okay. Shows the 13th Tachlis. Yeah, okay. No, we'll go slowly too. We'll spend the time. It's just like, there's so much here, and it's just a question of not only the content, but what's very important is how he shaped the content and how he puts it together. It's a very, okay. Okay, so what's the Tachlis? Mashu mevakesh lahasig al yedei hapulaso. That's what he intends to accomplish by way of his act. Erech mashal. Oh, I did do it here. Halomed al manat lasot. A person who learns in order to do. Tachliso belimud hi lahasig ioso oso matzit tovim. He's learning with the intention, not with the intention, with his goal of his learning is in order to do good things. Okay, so here's one thing. Okay, here what I did here is I took a chart that I made from Sefer Higayon. Okay, and here you'll notice what you just said here, and you just spoke about the let's see if I can get fancy here. Okay, there we go. Boom. That's not nice. Okay, but that's what it is. There's the active cause, the Siba Puelis. There's the Tachlis. Okay, it's the goal. And there's the, what you want to call the material cause. Okay, and there's the formal cause. Okay, there's your four Aristotelian boxes, right? Yeah? Not only will you find it there, but lo and behold, this is the Vilna Gaon, who we all love, right? Very Jewish man, isn't he? What does the Vilna Gaon say? The Vilna Gaon, this is Perish on Mishlei. Mishlei starts off and he says, Mishlei, Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael. That's the first pasuk. Mishlei, by Shlomo ben David, who's the king of Israel. Second pasuk. Ladas Chachma, in order to know wisdom, Umusar, and ethics, Lahavin Imre Vina, and to understand the words of the statements of understanding. Lekachas Muskar Haskel, and to take ethical knowledge. Let's say, that's my parents. Vilna Gaon. That's all Vilna Gaon? What happened? Okay, yes, Vilna Gaon. Let me get it back here. That's what he says here. Mishlei, he says like this: B'kol dava yesh chomer poel surah v'tachlis. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
That's it. He says everything has chomer, poel, surah, and tachlis. Kamosha katuv, come upon me, as I've written many times. It's not the first time that the Vilna Gaon said it. V'chein hukan, and in Mishlei, this first two statements is exactly those four things, because Shlomo was a chacham. V'chein hukan, Mishlei hu hachomer, shel hasefer hazeh. The chomer of this, the material of this work, is called mashalim, right? That's the chomer that he's going to be using in this thing. He's not going to be using clay, physical things, we said, right? This is he's going to use in this intellectual study, he's going to use mashalim as his material. Where am I here? Okay, let's go. Mishlei hu hachomer shel hasefer hazeh. Shlomo hu hapoel. Who's the poel of the sefer? It says Mishlei. That's the chomer. Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. That's the poel. That's who's going to be doing this. Okay. Ladas chachmo musar. Who Tavniso v'tsuraso v'inyano. You say three words here we have to be. But basically that's the tsura he wants to say. That's the intellectual definition of what he's going to do here, right? He's going to teach us wisdom and musar and understanding, let's just say that way, right? V'tachlis hu, and what's the tachlis of this poel who's using this chomer in a certain surah? The tachlis is musar, lekachas musar haskel. Ki lo halimud ika ela hamaisa. That's what the Vilna Gaon says, because it's not the learning that's the essential here, and just learning the material intellectually, but it's actually producing results. So that's why he says lekachas musa haskel. You have to absorb it, you know. So there it is. Okay, I can't be any less religious or more than the Vilna Gaon. Here, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know where this comes from, so I'm sure
this is Mishlei. Oh, what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that the Vilna Gaon, at some point accuses the Rambam of being engaged in what he called philosophia arura.
Right. So obviously he didn't think this was part of that. I don't think he felt that this was part of that. See, that's why I said this is Roman numerals. This is Roman numerals. I mean, you like it, you don't like it, fine. I mean, but it's just basic understanding, you see. It's just basic understanding of reality, that things have a chomer and a tzur and a tachlis, You don't like it, fine, you don't like it, but that's what's going on around you, you know what I mean? So, but the other things I think that he's more involved in, more, there's other stuff in more nevuchim and stuff like that, more, philosophical stuff. I think that's what he doesn't really like so much. But this stuff is really just the aleph base of thinking. If you can't figure out that all men have legs and Reuven is a man, and therefore if you can't come to the conclusion that Reuven has legs, so then you just don't understand how the mind works. B'chlal, So that's why I brought it here. First of all, you brought it up correctly because you're involved. And second of all, the Vilna Gaon says it clearly. So anything he says about this whole thing about Chachma Yavanis, but these things, that's why this is my analogy is to Arabic numerals. You know, no one gets upset about how we do mathematics. If you look how the Rashi does mathematics, he gets the same result with little bit different system. You know, but anyway, what it is. Okay. So the Ramchal. See, here's the Ramchal. There's the Poel, the Siba Poelis. Now here, the Ramchal does beautiful stuff, and to me, it's the strong Seder of the Ramchal. I mean, among other things, I mean, his clarity of definition, but his Seder is so important, how he takes these concepts and he puts them in a schema, you see? You see, he has the Siba and the Mesubav. And the Siba has what he calls the Siba Chitzonis and the Siba Penimis. That means the external and internal and external. So the Poel, the Siba Poelis, what a person does is something that he does is an external activity, and he says also that Tachlis, his goal is external. Whereas he holds that the Chomer and the Tzura, he calls it internal, because that's more of the definition of the thing, right? But anyway, here, for instance, when it comes to the Siba Poelis, you see here, if you notice, let me get my little, maybe I can do a spot. I don't know, have fun here. Okay, you see that spot there? Here's our Moledis. In the Poelis, he has again the Siba Chitzonis Poelis and the Moledis, which he just talked about, which is the Siba which gives birth to like the father giving birth to the child. But then he defines also what he calls the Mikayemis and the Mafsedis. There's the Siba Mikayemis, which means what keeps it going. Like the father, when he gives birth to the child, doesn't keep the child going. The child now becomes an independent entity. So now what keeps that person going, okay? Or Rabbi Goldstein always used to say, you know, there's one reason why a person gets married, but it's another reason why he stays married. Okay, he may have, the leader of the act may have been, who knows, he likes the beauty of the girl. Maybe afterwards it's not so great that everyone's looking at his wife, you know what I mean? So he has to have a Siba Mikayemis of what he's doing it for. And then here is the last part, is the Siba Mafsedis. What is the Siba that will destroy the Siba Poelis? Okay, which is very, very, if you look at it, if you learn the Ramchal's books and then you apply them to Mesil Shasharim, you will see that he is faithful to his system. In every chapter he writes how to acquire a trait of Zahiri. First he divides it into its chalakim, its parts, then he tells you how to acquire it, and what are the sibim, how you may lose it, the sibim mafsedot. Okay, so he tells you his schema, again, straight out. We call it, shikuf, I mean, he's very open about it and clear about it, and then he actually does it, which is his gaonus. I mean, not only does he have all this material in his mind, but he's able to express it in a very clear way, and that's why the Vilna Gaon himself said he couldn't find an extra word in the first 3 chapters of the Ramchal. Okay, so it means everything that the Ramchal did was, again, he's one of these very highly conscious person who's also a kodesh, which I always have to mention. We're not creating computer chips here. We're creating kedusha, but the kedusha takes intellect. If you don't have a sharp intellect and a clear intellect, then the kedusha that you're creating is not going to be real kedusha. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. You can only produce as much as you understand. Now, so these people have those 2 great qualities of being kadosh with a clear mind. Okay, and all the chachamim are that way. You can't get to those positions without these 2 qualities. Okay, anyway, so here you see in the Poelis he has the moledis, the mikayemis, and the mafsedis. Okay, those are the 3 things that what gave birth to the what the Siba Poelis gave birth to, what keeps the action that keeps that thing going, and what can destroy the Siba Poelis. Okay. Then he has here, which he mentioned here in Tfunos, the poelis, and there's two types of poelis. One that's called tivis and one that's called ritzonis. One which is instinctive, your heart beating, as you said, and one is an act of will, which men have. Then he breaks it down to these three parts, which are very important also: rachok, karov, and samuch. I'll give you a very nice example of it. Very nice example. I believe I read it in I think it was in Chavos Levavos, but this is what it says. A person is being hit by the policeman. So what is he afraid of? He's afraid of the club. And that's called the Siba Samucha. That's the direct cause of his fear. But really, if he thought about it, it's the policeman that he has to be afraid of. And the stick is only a Siba Kalis. You see the Siba Kalis here? The stick is being wielded by the policeman. Okay. Now, if he thought about it a little deeper, he'd realize that the policeman is not really the cause of him being hit. It's really the policeman's commander, right, who sent the policeman. Okay, so that's called the Siba Karova, because it's not the Smucha. Okay, it's not the policeman himself. But it's one step removed. Then if he thought about it further, he'd find out that it's really the king that told his minister, for instance, to send a policeman to hit this guy, and that's called the Siba Rachoka. Okay, so he says when things happen to people, they're always looking at the Siba Smucha. They're looking at the immediate cause. But he makes a statement like this, which is dramatic. He says, the further away the cause is, the more important it is. And the closer the cause is, the less important it is. So really, the stick is the least important, even though you feel it, because it's Samucha. But the most important thing is the Kodesh Baruch Hu is very, very far away. Okay, our real job in Torah is to bring that the Kodesh Baruch Hu, who's a Siba Rechokta, and to understand that he's doing everything, you see. And all these things, people are just, everything that's happening is just intermediate shlichim of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, but anyway, there it is. You have the Rechoka, the Karov, and the Smucha. Okay, and the application there. Yeah, it wasn't mine. It was, I'm almost positive it's Chavos Levavos. I get him sometimes mixed up. There's two people I like. I mean, okay, like a lot of people. I like all the Chachamim, but I enjoy Chavos Levavos, and I also enjoy Rabbeinu Bechaya on the Chumash. I try to read him every week. He has a part on Mishlei. There's a lot of important Yesodos that he brings. Anyway, that's what it is. So anyway, that's the Siba Poelis, right? And then he has what the Tachlis, because every Poel is a Poel because of some Tachlis, unless it's a Poel Batul, right? Unless it's maybe Tivis, but a Poel is Poel with a Tachlis. And then he talks about Sibi Kuris and Siba Achron and Tefelah, so you could read all those things there. And here's your Panimus, which your famous, Chomris and Surah that we just read. And there's the Karov and the Rechok, how far away is the material. We did this crazy story about, anyway, it doesn't matter, right? When you finally see the computer, but that's what you see here comes from the material you see here really is made up of metal and copper and plastic and all these different things, So, but finally you get it to you in this particular form. It's gone through a lot of changes, but that's the Homer. And then he has the intellectual surah, you see, and here we are again, the atzmis and mitukdekes and the built-in mitukdekes, indirect, you see, and that's where I showed you. He talks about the mashtin kir and talking about a dog, for instance, So this is the classic ones with the sibs and the mints. Anyway, so there it is. I mean, it's from my little reading of RSI, I found I only read an English translation. I found it very, very confusing. I didn't find it a clear statement of of his meaning at all. And I tried a few times. I had the English translation. I tried because I realized it. I mean, they're all open about it. This stuff is Aristotelian, but very difficult to read that. I mean, very difficult. And when you read him, he's as clear as day. I mean, he has his flow chart, and he defines everything, and it's fantastic, the Ramchal. Okay, so we'll go a little weiter. Okay. Oops, let's see. I got rid of that, and I got rid of all these toys here. Okay, let's go down a little more here. Okay, the 14th he calls the Mesubah. That's what we did, the Mesubah, right? We said. Okay, that's the Mesubah. Now he goes over here, and the 15th one he calls the Meschaber. The Meschaber. Who called Mikra Sheyislave v'Yischaber L'Nosei. Now, the classical word mikra, accident, means not too much in English, but it means things that are not part of the essence, and that's what he calls a meschaber. So he says it's either a mikra sheyislalev yischaber l'nosei, no self al atzmuso, something that is attached to the subject. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's not. I mean, I just want to point out, because you say the English sounds weird, but it's actually, in academic English, it's translated exactly as accident.
Yeah, I understand.
So you have, in Aristotle, you have the essence and the accident. An accident doesn't mean a car crash. It just means what is not essential. It's something that is accidentally a characteristic.
Right. So I'm just saying, in common, David Sackton, my other chaver, I have all these guys who are involved in these things. Anyway, David is, I may mention to you, his major was Aristotelian philosophy. He went to St. John's, So in the beginning of the yeshiva, so, we were all new and stuff like that. So Rabbi Goldstein, pulls out these books because he wants to teach people, the basic ground rules of thinking. So he starts with this, and David starts hitting the ceiling. He says, wait a minute, Rabbi, I came here to learn Torah, not Aristotle. And he was the only one that knew what it was about because he studied it. Okay. So in the end, I got him to translate these works, because I didn't have any background in Aristotle at all. And formal logic. I mean, I took logic in college, but, it's this type of course you sleep through. You don't really take so seriously. But, no, you passed the grade, but, unless you're that, but he was like in it, you know what I mean? So now I got him to do this work, and he, Baruch Hashem, that was many years ago. So we did together Tfunos, and we did Higayon. Now he's gone even further, with it. And one of the big things when we were translating in the beginning was we had a big discussion whether we should use the formal English words or use words that would have more import in common parlance and common language. So in the beginning we decided, he decided really that we should use the technical words, because if people want to know what these things mean, they can then go to a dictionary and look it up. And if we make up our own words, then who says they're going to ever find the full meaning? But recently he made a whole new translation, which I haven't seen, because I'm an application person. I can't take too much of the, I can't take too much theory. It has to work with me. You know what I mean? I want to learn. So, but I don't mind theory, but it can't be too much. Anyway, so he translated the whole thing now with more meaningful words in common language. I didn't see it yet, but unfortunately Feldheim now has a lot of problems. It just collapsed, and who knows what's going to happen. But whatever it is, that's the word accident, and I hit on that. Okay, great. So anyway, with the Meschaber, which is not the essence, it's things which are elements of or things that hang on. We'll see what he says. He says Echad, the first thing is ma shemischaber ba'atzmo shel hanosei, o alav, o alav, o elav, either to it or on it. And he gives examples. Kamo, chachma b'chacham. So wisdom is something that is predicated to a wise person. or kalos b'davakal, or lightness to a light object, or kavod to the nechabed. Okay, so he says that a subject like a chacham uh, or an honorable person or has these qualities attached to it. Why it's not called an eichus, you'll have to explain to me. But it's a mischaber, that's what he says. Something is attached to the essence, not the essence itself. I would have said a human being that has chachma, so the chachma is something that's attached to the person. Why did he say the chachma is attached to the chacham? I can't answer you that. But that's what he says. You can answer it if you'd like.
But he's saying here that the chachma is mischaber.
It's a mischaber to the chacham. And by the way, he always...
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He always...
Well, but he just, I think, again, just to use the classical Aristotelian model here, for Aristotle, the thing, when Aristotle classifies different forms of what he calls substances, so he says the thing that is the most real is the actual thing. So
right.
The chacham is the thing, and the chachma is a predication of the thing.
Right. I understand. Okay. Again, it's a okay. You have to get into it. You have to be. It's a way of viewing things.
Yeah.
But fine. That's it. So the thing. He's very thing oriented, and
yes.
he goes from the thing upward. And I mean, when you read you read all the Ramchal. That's a copy. You know, you go from the physical thing and start building upwards into the categories, right? So you start with the physical animal that you see. And then from that, like say you see a physical dog and you put it together with a cat and you make a category called Balei Chayim. And then you keep going up the scale to more and more higher level abstractions. Okay, beseder. Not against it. Hatzipui.
You know, by the way, this is Aristotle's. Sorry, just interesting, maybe for you. I don't know, maybe it's boring, but this was Aristotle's big machlokes with Plato.
Yes.
Plato did the exact opposite. Plato said the most real thing is the idea of the dog is real, and then actual dogs, you know, they're just copies of the real abstraction.
Right. Now we have to figure out the Torah attitude. Okay. So what does it mean? I mean, these are deep things. I'm not just throwing these things out to have fun, but it says that Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world. So does that mean that the musagim, as Plato would say, were used to create the reality? You see, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to see.
In Plato, you know, maybe I don't know if you're interested in this, but there's one of Plato's later dialogues is called the Timaeus. And in the Timaeus, he describes the creation of the universe, and he says that there's two separate things. There was what he calls the demiurgos, which means the great craftsman, and then there is the great blueprint, which consists of ideas. Now, the great craftsman looks into the blueprint and designs the world based on that.
Well, that's exactly the statement in the Zohar, right?
So, you know, what happened is that this dialogue. This dialogue was I think it was unknown for a long time. It was hidden in some library somewhere until the medieval times. Mm-hmm. And when the medieval Christians got their hands on it, they read it for the first time and they said, "Oh my gosh, this is Moses speaking Greek."
Right. Because if you cut out the creator, I don't know what Aristotle's position was on the creator, but he's not interested in the creator. He's interested in the creation, and he's interested in building up reality from the creation. He's going from the down up, but not from the up down. He's going from the physical to the intellectual, not from the intellectual to the physical. But that's an interesting split. Just to bring up a little bit to show the difference between classical Aristotelian and not, the the Malbim, he says the classical definition is a Baal Chai Medaber, right? That's what we're learning all over the place. That's classical, because Baal Chai is the sug, and then the Hebdel, definitive Hebdel, is the talking that separates up from the animal. So the Malbim says it's incorrect. We're a Medaber Baal Chai, not a Baal Chai Medaber. The sug that we come from is the Medabrim, and we share that Medabrim with the Malachim. What separates us from the Malachim is that we're Baal Chai.
Where does Malbim say this?
I have to look it up. I'm very bad at my sources. I have to look it up. All right, it's one of my.
Well, I like it because it's very Chabad. You know, it's very like the Baal Tanyas is very similar things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's the big. We are not Aristotelian. We're a combination because we're definitely logical people, but we don't. Our interest is the Kodesh Baruch Hu's interaction in the universe. A guy doesn't have that. What is a guy supposed to do? You tell me. What is a guy supposed to do? If he doesn't have the Torah, what is he supposed to do? Well, he can only look at himself and start building a framework of reality, and that's what Aristotle did. Let's just look at us, and that's what all these people, Descartes, everyone, they were really trying to say, let's start from what are the basic premises that are true that we can start building from. They're all looking for that because they don't have the Torah, so they have to always go from the self outward. But Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah, so we don't have these problems, you know. I mean, anyway, yeah, that's only one aspect. But whatever it is, that's it. So here he says, Sipui ala kli or levush ala adam. Those are things that are elav. Those are on the things. Okay, he makes this position between alav and elav. Okay, that's what he says. One's upon it and one is to it. Like the Chachma is more to the Chacham. It's something that the Chacham possesses. Okay. A behema misukenes. Wait, what happened here? A behema misukenes sheyesh bo mikra misukan. Okay, that's another one of his mischabrim. A dangerous animal that has the mikra, again, the accent here, the mikra misukenes. A matpachat sheru'uya b'mayim, a rag, head covering that was soaked in water. So sheyesh bo mikra zeh shel hiyos sheru'uya b'mayim. It's the essence of the thing is a head covering, let's say, but the mikra, it happens to be soaked in water. Okay. So that's what he says here. It's a mikra shislava v'yischaber l'nosei nosaf al atzmuso. Okay. Okay. Now he says there's three types of mischabrim. Okay. This one was mischaba el atzmuso shel nosei. The second is Inyan shenimsa imanose bisman achad. It exists simultaneously with the nose, with the nose that you're talking about. For instance, pas me'afa imsli, a bread that was baked with something roasted. Okay, so you have like meat and bread, and they just happen to be baked together. You know, you have roasted meat and you have bread that was baked. Okay, so they were put together. They don't. One is not a quality of the other. They just have to exist simultaneously with the other. They're associated with it. Or kol shehu ikar v'imo tefela, one more intellectual thing. The ikar and the tafel. The essence and the like when you say a bracha, what you say a bracha on the ikar, right? The major the part of the soup, let's say. Okay, and the tuffle is a minor. You like say you have a piece of cake and it has an icing on it, right? So the cake is the ikar, and the icing is just the tafel. It's a minor aspect of the whole thing. So the cake is and the icing are just two parts of the whole and exist simultaneously with each other. Okay, and that's what we're saying. They just exist simultaneously with each other, but they're not part of each other. One is called icing and one is called the cake. They just happen to be existing together. Okay, and the third type, he says, that is called kodom and miyuchar, things that relate to each other because one is before the other. V'hu ma sheyagdim l'nosei o she'yavo acharav. It's just something that happens to precede or come after the subject. Derech mashal. Notlin yadayim v'achar kach mozgin et hakos. In the Seder, right, what do? I think you first wash your hands and then you pour the wine. So the washing the hands has nothing to do with the creation of the wine. It's just so it's an act that happens to precede this act. You first have to wash your hands and then you pour the cup. Or hine natilas yadayim hu kodemis. It just happens to be in time before the pouring of the wine. Umazikas hakos hu haba acher natilas yadayim, and that's something that comes after it. So the relationship between these two nosim is that one precedes the other in time. It's not like they exist simultaneously in time, they precede one another in time. This one existed simultaneously in time. Okay, but this one are related because one comes before the other one. Okay, so that's what he calls the Meskaber. Here is the 16th one, which is Makom. Now, if you know from Aristotle, he has the 9 mikrim in one etzim, right? He says it's the etzim and there's 9 mikrim. Yeah, the Ramchal here in Tfunos puts it together in the 24. He does not make those distinctions. Over in Higayon, he clearly starts making those distinctions, but here he just gave a general overview. Okay, so that's what we're just trying to handle it generally. Like I said, I don't want to get involved in all of Higayon. It's like much. I did like hours of the stuff on it. Okay, 17 is called a matz. Oh, so we didn't do makom. Makom is obvious. Shtei gezutros zeh l'malam mizeh. 2 patios, one on top of the other. So the one is placed above the other one. Shtei ayaros zu smucha l'zeh. 2 cities, one next to each other. So that's the place. The places that one is next to each other, one is above each other. Esrei asara batim zeh lifnim mizeh. There's 10 houses, each one in front of the other one. Okay, so that's the place that the subject occupies. Here's the matzav, the position. V'hu tochnit hityatzvut hanosi b'makomo. How it's positioned in its place. Derech mashal hakora es Megillah omed v'yoshev. A person who reads the Megillah can either stand up. This matzav could be standing or it could be sitting. Be'erev kol adam yater v'yikora u'v'voki yamod. Kriyat Shema according to Shammai. In the evening, the man should be in a lying down position, and in the morning, he should say Kriyat Shema standing up. So there, the matzav was very, very important. 18 is the tenuah, the movement. V'hu ma sheyatek hanosim mimakom el makom. It's the thing that moves the subject from one place to the next. Derech mashal, haholech mimakom she'ein osim lamakom she'osim. A person who walks, which is the tenuah that he's doing, from one place where they do this mitzvah to or have this custom to a place where they don't have this custom. Okay, the 19 is Zman. See, these are the mikrim. Zman, Matzav, Kinyan, Ona, these are all the classical ones. But he didn't in Tfunos, an interesting thing why, I don't know exactly why, but he didn't, he gives like a kitzer. He said in Tfunos he wanted to build it on the learning of the Gemara. That's what he said. Whereas in Higayon, he says clearly that he took it from other sources. But here he wanted to build the system more internally, and he really talks about learning much more in Tfunos more than the abstract logical system. Anyway, it's very interesting. This is called Zman, Me'emet HaKornet Ashma. Okay, Be'erev Kol Adam. Okay, when do you read the Shema? That's a question of time. Be'erev Kol Adam Yitev V'Yikora U'Bavoka Yamod. It's the same statement now, but he's talking about in the evening. He's talking about the aspect of the time. In the evening, the person should lie down. In the morning, you should wake up. So before, in the Matzav, he was emphasizing the position, which is lying or standing up, and now he's emphasizing the time. Okay. 20 is Yachas. For whom ma she'echad mit Yachas l'so. It's that which one thing has a relationship. The relationship something that has something else. For instance, the generation of Moshe. Okay, that means this generation's relationship to Moshe Rabbeinu. Zaro shel Avram, or the relationship that the seed has to Avram. It's the seed of Avram. That's the relationship. He says in Higayon, this is the biggest category, by the way, relationship. 21 is the Nosei. Vahainu shahanidon shelifneinu hu mikra min mikram. Interesting way how he describes a Nosei. The thing that we're judging is only a mikra of something. Sheyeh nasu al echad min hanosim, which is predicated to one of the subjects. Vehine nivekesh mahu noso. We are asking, what is the subject? So we see a certain mikra, and we say, well, what is the subject of the mikra? Derech mashal. K'she'omru, eze davar she Chaluka tumaso ben tumas meis l'sheres. What is that thing which divides makes the difference between tuma of a mace and a sheretz? V'hari oma zemach teches. So we have a certain mikra that means that there's a difference between the tuma of a mace and a sheretz, and we want to know what is that thing that will show us the difference, and the answer is it's machteches. That's the nosei that produces that difference between these two types of tumas. So
this is the same as what we're saying is the differentia.
No, I think here he's trying to, when we see him, here it happens to be a difference, but I don't think it has to be a difference. Whenever you see a mikra and you ask the question, well, did we see a mikra here? What is the subject of the mikra? Or even, like I was saying before, you read Maka behema yishalmena. Well, what is? We only know that someone hit another man, but who's the nosei of the hit? Is he an adult? Is he? It's when you see a mikra and you want to identify its subject. That's the point here. Here it happens to be the differential. I think Ezu dava shechaluka to masana. What object has a difference? I didn't read it right. In what object can you see a difference between the tumah of mace and the tumah of sheretz? What's the object? We're looking for the object where we'll find this difference between these two types of tumah. Okay. Here's the
topic.
Yes, the topic. Yes, the topic is a very good word. The 22 here is the dimion. You see, now this is very interesting, because he mixes in these 24 all the mikrim, and like here dimion, hevdel, and nigut. So I mean, it's an interesting mix. Again, this is an introduction to Sefer Higayon. He just that's why we said that Higayon really is a sequel to this book. But okay, because here he was really much more interested in the process of the learning from the Gemara and the debating process and that system. And this was just at the end of the book. He said, look, anytime you have a subject, after you've done your learning, you should ask yourself these following questions. What's the getter, and what's the halakim, and what's the poel, and what's the pool, and what's the hefel, But he didn't spell them all out in their detail, and that really didn't inigayo. Okay. Dimyon. Derech mashal. Dimyon is a comparison. Damya le sa'as'a. I forgot that was. It was comparable to a sa'asa. I forgot what that was on colon. Cherev hari hu kachalel. In Tumah, Rishon of the sword is like the dead person. It's both first degree of Tumah. Okay, so whenever you say Kuz, it's always a dimyon, a comparison. Okay, Aidi va'aidi chad shiurahu. Both this and that both have the same shiur. So these two things share a dimyon because they have the same shiur, the same measurement to them. Okay, now here's the 23rd, which is called the Hevdel. That's what you were talking about. V'hu heder ha-dimyon. See, the Hevdel means not what the point of comparison between two things, but the point of difference between two things. Derech mashal, shani dam de'itkish lamaya. Why is dam different than this other item? Probably, I don't know what, yayin, whatever, because it has a hekesh to water. Okay, so that's the difference that it has from another item. Or shani eva minachai, the itkish ladam, the same thing. The eva minachai is different because from some other item because it has a hekesh to dam. So that's called the hevdel. It makes it different from something else. What's the 24? That's called a nigud. It's called the opposite. Okay, so you have what it's two things, what it's compared to, how it's different from something else, and how it's opposite to something else, the nigud. V'hu hefech hadimyon, it's the opposite of the dimyon, the opposite of the comparison. Kamosh nispar shlamala, hanigud b'kol minei v'hevi'anu mashalehem ayin sham. He writes a whole thing about opposites there in Der Tfunos. Okay, so here we're not going to go into that, but basically that's the introduction. Now, in my application here, what I tried to do, and I was looking for words, and you're welcome to help me in this particular. It's really I'm developing this thing in front of you, with you. I'm just thinking about it and working on it, but I'm really I never did it. I mean, I've done a lot of different things, but this particular application of making this chart was a real chiddush that I had when I started presenting the material. So let's see if we can get to it. Let's go here. Oops, that's not where it is. Bum, 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 bum. I'm just going to say this document. I have to send it to you. You see, when I first, I'm a advocate, and this is something that my Rabbi Goldstein explained to me, I'm an advocate of letting the Torah teach me its own system. Okay, instead of wholesale taking this Aristotelian system, even though it's modified by the Ramchal and this and that, I would like to let the Torah teach me how to learn itself. Okay, so the first process that I did when I did that was I just took the text itself and I said, now how does it present its material? So the absolute first thing that I see is that the Torah does talk in terms of cases in law. Okay, and that's the first way that I divided the material. You see, if you notice, Kitifana Evidivri, that's a case, when you buy the Eved Ivri, then the law is Sheishanim Yavod Ubishvi Yetze Lechav Shichinam. Then we had these mischabrim to this Mr. Eved Ivri, right? Now we're going to talk about not the person who acquired him, but the person who acquired him has to release him in this time. But now we have certain mischabrim that we spoke about. If he came in alone, he went out alone. If he had a wife, then she goes out with him. If the master gave him a wife, then the children then the Aldeo Bonim Obenos, the male and female children, V'aldel, excuse me, it says V'imad yiten lo V'alda, and she gave birth to boys and girls. Ha'isha v'yoladeha tiyeh ladoneho. You see, that should be here like that. There we go, because that's the law. And then the law is that the wife and the children belong to the master. V'hu, the other actor, yotzei chavshi, goes out free. Okay, so again, very important. That was my first stage, simply realizing that the Torah is expressing itself in case and law. Here's another case now. Ve'im omer ha'eved ahavti es adoni v'esishti v'espiti lo etzei chavshi. If he makes that statement, then we have another law. What do? The master has to take him to the judges, and judges have to bring him next to the door or the mezuzah, and they have to take an awl and poke it in his ear, and then he becomes an Eved Olam. Okay, so that was it. So that was the first subject, and that's what I'm saying. We just keep doing it, Here we go. So the Amid Ivri again, case of law, Vikiyim Koishas Bito La'ama Lo Teitzei. Okay, and so on and so on. So that was my first breakdown of the Chumash itself. I didn't do anything except, look, I just noticed, I'm an observant Jew, that the Torah is talking about case and law. So that was my first analysis going on. Okay, so then my second way of doing it was to make this table, because here the table in the gray was all the laws, correct? These are all the laws, like here he is. But then I took these terms from Derek Tfunos, and I said, but wait a minute, let's now go into the no-say here, which is really I call the no-say. You had the no-say and the nasu, or the subject, and we're predicating laws to these subjects, right? And subject is too limited of a word, so even though it says no-say, so I call it case because it's more clearly a interaction of people here. So now I want to give labels to the various actors in this case, correct? So who are you going to call? So first the no-say. Okay, the real no-say here we said was Eved Ivri as opposed to Am Ivriya. Okay, that's what we're talking about. The Pesukim we just have to have on this, have to know where things are. Okay, but then we said, wait a minute. We have the Pu'ula. The Torah is talking about a Pu'ula, Tikneh. We don't know who the Poel is here, right? Doesn't say. I wrote the word in gray, Adon, but he doesn't say who he is. And we see the Hef. Now here I had a hard point. What are we going to call the object of this Pu'ula called Tikneh? So I called him the Hefel. Okay, because the Hefel is the result of the activity. Okay, now I don't know if that's the best word to use because I was really struggling with. He's another actor, and it's true that the pool of Kinyan is creating this other human being into a Eved Ivri, right? Mm-hmm. So again, the classification is something that I'm working on. I mean, that's what I called it, okay, because that was the best I had. But you have two people here involved in an activity. The Adon is doing a Maisa Kinyan on the Jew, and he's changing this Jew through this activity of doing a Kinyan into an Eved Ivri. So that's really a deeper analysis of what's going on here. So you have the Siba Poelis as the Adon. The Pula that he's doing is called the Kinyan. And the one who he's doing it to really is a Jew. And he's turning him into an Eved Ivri. Okay? But again, how to go further than that is something that we have to talk about. But this is what I did. So basically, I tried to break it down in the who was doing the act and what was the act and what's the result of the act. And that's why later on I called this the Mesubal of the act. But anyway, and here we say now, Imbekap, who is this talking about? Imbekapo Yavo, if he came in by himself. Okay, then Bako, you see, who's the subject of that? You see, that's a mischaber to the Eved Ivri. You see, right? Okay, good. And so there's another mischaber here. If he's a Baal Isha, right? Right? Im Baal Isha who? Then Yosei Ishta Imo. Now here it says Im Adonavi Tenlo Isha. Now, his master gave him, there's another relationship that the master gave him a wife, and also, V'yalda lo banim v'banos, and he gave birth to sons and daughters. Okay, so now we have three actors here. We have the Isha, V'yaldeha tiel adoneha, that's the wife and children, and they're compared because they both go to Yad now. Vahu, the other actor here, he goes Yotzei Chavshri. So really we have three miskabrim to the Eved, right? But this is the wife that he acquired. Unlike this wife here, you see, here in Balishto, who that's a wife that he had before he came in to Avdus. And this wife is the one that the master gave him. Okay? So those are two different categories of wives that he has, but I called it the mischabrim of the thing. Okay? Now, so that was the second level of doing this activity. Okay? Then I went to another level of it. I'm just showing you the history because this is, I just created it. I don't know. I'm willing to change it. I don't mind. It's just, you know. Okay.
What's the? I mean, I get some of what's your point of breaking it down into all these parts?
So why did I do this? Okay, why did I do it? Okay, I did it because of the last class we had. But I did it. Let me just go here, and then I'm going to answer you. Okay. I just want to show the last level of abstraction, and then I'll answer your question by showing you this chart. I'll answer you right now. What I want to do is two activities. I want to make sure that I'm understanding clearly what the Torah is doing, but I also want to understand what is the format of presentation that the Kodesh Baruch Hu is doing when he's presenting his information. And again, if 2 and 2 does not equal 4, then I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to say, Kodesh Baruch Hu, please explain this to me. Something does not add up. Okay? For instance, if Eved Ivri starts, or all these things are talking about damages, all of a sudden I see Eved Ivri, which is not talking about damage, it's talking about how a man acquires an Eved, so I'm going to raise my hand to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, I'm going to say, wait a minute, this doesn't look like it's properly organized. Okay, so only by doing a careful analysis of how the material is presented and being careful about who the actors are and what their relationships are and what their judgments are, of course, then I will be able to see, number one, is the process that the Kodesh Baruch is using to present the material, and then if I see an anomaly, I can raise my hand and I say that doesn't make sense to me. Okay? Or if I see a hole in the material, then I'll say, wait a minute, here, how come you didn't tell me who the Poel is? Right? Now, how does this then impact on our learning? Okay, before we get to this thing. Well, remember, this time, okay, There we go. Now, last time we took this little table, you see? Here's my poll, instead of saying the Mischaber, I was more interested in the Mesubav. Okay, we said, it says, our pasuk says, Maka ish umes mos yumas. That's what the pasuk says, correct? So we noticed that the poel was not written, but the activity of the poel was written. And the victim was written, called ish, and the Mesubav of the hit was written. Right? And then we compared it to this other pasuk, which we didn't know about, in Vayikra, which says, V'ish ki yakeh kol nefesh adam mos yumas. Lo and behold, you read Rashi, and he brings the Mechilta, and all the things that we were doing happen to be very significant. How come the poll wasn't mentioned here, and it was mentioned here? Remember we did that?
Yeah.
Okay. So by presenting the information in this way, you first of all, the hole or what's missing pops out at you, okay? And number two, anytime that there's a hole, you're going to have to explain, well, could you please fill that hole in? Okay? How do you fill it in? Now, what happens in thinking is that the mind automatically fills things in, and that's one of the most dangerous things in learning. Because your mind says, oh, since we're talking about an ish, this means an ish that's maka an ish. And then you slide over the very important thing, no, the pole is not there. Why is the pole not there? Then we came to a very important chiddush here, that when a pole is not there, it means the widest pole possible. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, I mean, it definitely, you can see how it's useful in Rashi's analysis of these two psukim, and the way he plays on the gaps. Does this kind of thing happen in other places in Rashi too, or in other Mefarshim?
Yeah. Now, first of all, it's not Rashi. Yeah. It's the Mechilta. Where Mechilta is Tanaic literature. It's like a Mishnah. Okay? The Mechilta is a Brisa. Okay? It's not written in the formal Mishnayos that we have, but it's outside material put together, called the Mechilta, and it usually runs according to Pesukim. So it's not Rashi. Rashi's just bringing it. Okay? So this activity is a very old activity. Okay? Now, as far as your question, does it happen in other places? Well, let's see. Now, lo and behold, here's another pasuk. Here's two Pesukim again. Here it says, Maka ishu meis mos yumas. That's our pasuk, right? And this one says, Ish yazid lahargo ba'arama l'reihu me'im mizbechi tekena lamus. Now, what did I do here? Let me use the fantastic abilities of word here. Let me get rid of this thing here. Okay. Where's my little thing? How come I can't see it? Okay. That's interesting. There's usually a little V here that makes this thing go smaller, and I just don't see it right now. Okay, not important. I need it because I need to go here. I'm going to split the screen a little here. Let's go back to here. And let's go to doesn't matter really. It's fine. And let's go down to the pasuk that we need here. There we go. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so the first pasuk said, Maka ishun meis mos yumas, right? Person who hits another person, and the person dies, then he has to be killed. Okay, but then it says, Ki yazid ish el re'ehu lahargo ba'arama me'im mizbechi techena lemus. When a man intentionally kills his neighbor, then take him from your Mizbeach. Those are the two psukim here. So now here I put it in, you see. Here again we have in Makaish we're missing the poel. So it says like this. This is the Rashi quoting the Mechilta. It says, V'ki yazid ish al re'ehu lahargo barama me'im mizbechi techena lamus. That's that second pasuk there, right? So I'm going to get rid of this since we saw the pasuk. But again, I had to reorganize the skim so that they'll fit in here. I didn't change anything. I just changed, the position. So it says like this. Lefi shenema makaish shemea ani. Since it says makaish shemea ani rofe shehemis v'shiliach beistin shehamis b'malkus habayim va'av hamake es beno v'harav harodeh es talmidav v'hashogeg. If I only had the first pasuk, which again does not define who the Makkah is, I would say since it doesn't define him, so it's the broadest definition. Meaning, even if a doctor killed his patient, or Shliach Beistin who is giving the 39 lashes to the victim, if he killed the person who he's whipping, or a father who is punishing his child, or a rabbi who is punishing his student, or a person who kills even b'shogeg, I would say all these fit in the category of hamakeish because the poel is not defined. Talmud lomar v'ki yazid v'lo l'shogeg. First of all, the second pasuk says no, ish yazid lahargo. So that immediately eliminates shogeg, right? You with me? So, and I didn't say it. This is the Mechilta, not me. It's Rashi bringing it. Okay. Now it says, what about lahargo barama? By the fact that it says lahargo barama, that comes to eliminate this havamina of who? V'lo shliach beistin, v'lo rofe harod, v'lo rofe, v'lo harod espeno, v'talmido, sha'afal pi shehem mezidin, even though they're hitting purposelessly, ein ma'armim. They're not doing it by rama. You with me? They're not doing through because of a craft. Okay, so their tachlis is done not by stealth. The tachlis is doing for education, or because the base thing is commanding them, or because they're trying to heal a person. Okay, so you ask me, does this keep happening? Well, you want to see another example? Here's another example. Okay,
is this also from
all Rashi? If you just look at Rashi, you'll find it all in Rashi. I didn't make up a word. I hate to make things up. I'm only trying to understand. It says the best meter you can have is shtika. Is to be quiet. First you have to learn, then you have to search. You have to learn. You have to ask, but you first have to hear. So again, I'm not an advocate of anything, except I want the Torah to teach me how to learn itself. So all I did was put it in the table. Well, I didn't make the table. The Torah made the table. So big deal. I'm using words. So the Ramchal didn't have those tools. That doesn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? It's not. Word is not doing anything except it's making it easier than writing in a pencil and a paper and erasing and doing all these things. But it is helping create a clarity that people don't have. And when you do this, then you can ask the right questions. You see, and if you don't do this, it's okay. If you're the Vilna guy and everything is in your head, it's fine. But the normal person, they're not sensitive enough to the text. So let's see what it says over here.
Can we,
we'll call it. Okay. Yeah, so what I'm going to do, I keep telling you this, but I'm going to do it right after we learn. I'm going to send you my this edition, okay? And again, I ask you, with your background, with your knowledge, if you can modify, change, improve. That's what I'm looking for. Again, because all I'm looking for is clarity. I'm not looking for anything else. I have nothing to push. I'm just trying to understand. I'm a student. So if you have any additions, like babakasha, you know what I mean? That's what we're here for. And I showed this to my son, and I showed it to my son-in-law, and everyone says the same thing. He told me too. He said, I wish I had this when I was a kid. You see? Because when everything is confused, it's taught in a way that you have to figure your way out of the maze. So, I mean, there is a certain power you get from figuring out of the maze. I had to do it, But why is it necessary? It's not a maze. I mean, it's very, very clear. It's just no one is telling you how it works. You know what I mean? They're just saying you just stay here and you learn for 50 years and eventually you'll figure it out. Okay, that's not bad. But if we can, if we have these tools, let's use it. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that I want to hold my
your question
suggestions until the very end of the process.
Okay.
No, my questions are but my suggestions of how to improve or whatever, how to
right. If you could
how to make videos
exactly right.
So I see.
Very good, because you have to see the whole process. And basically that's what that's what the whole thing is about, because I really do want to show the whole process. So I'm going to send you this first part. The next time we meet, I want to go into. I mean, there's loads of stuff. I think you look at the stuff and you learn yourself. But I would like to go the next time we meet, go into the Mishnah, okay? And look at our Babas Nazikin. And I said, as always, you're welcome to look at me. And absolutely, you can look at the Mishnah. It was written a long time before I came around and you came around, so it's open to everybody. Please read it. It's the first Mishnah in Baba Kama, and our focus is going to be, although it's going to take us a little time to get there, the din, which is Meitav Sedehu. I didn't show that to you here. We have to go through that here. Okay, please remind me the next time. I want to do the section of the shore damaging property. Could you remind me to do that? That's the next process. Okay, please write it down, and that's what we're going to focus on, because that's where we want to get. Okay, great. Have a great week, and have a bracha and hatzlacha. Okay, be well. Go to. Goodbye.